Hey everybody, it's Steve with Sky194, and I really appreciate you stopping by, taking your time to visit, and checking out my video. And we are here at Hungaroring, and a little bit different this time. I had a request just to show a drift or slide that I had the other day when I was racing in the CP server in the rain with the Porsche. So I'm just going to show a couple different camera angles, and then we're going to once we see that, then I was going to go show the setup for this um, for the car here, because I had a request for that also for the wet setup, so I'll show that, and I will post a link in the description also, and so look for that if you copy it that way. And then also I'm going to go over some of the pit strategies that I had requests for that too, to kind of explain more in detail of the pit strategies. So I'll go over that also. So let's get started. Show just a few clips of this. But basically, of course, it's a lot of rain. It's really slick. Hungaroring is real slick anyway. And of course, I got on this curbing right here, and that's what started it. I got on the curbing, and especially the rear tires, and it made the back end over rotate, and I pretty much just drifted through the whole corner. So there you go. You can see right there. So you can see where the curbing is what started it. I'm just lucky I didn't wreck and have an accident, and end my race. Here's inside the car. First, you can see the HUD here. Basically, never lifted off the gas, just kept the gas going. Top view, you can see hit the curb, and a nice little drift, which it was fun, but I really don't want to do that just for the fact that it's wasting, not the fastest way around. So, but anyway, there's that. Now let's go ahead and go to Hungaroring, and I will show the setup. Let's see what we got here. There's the wet setup. That's what I used. So here's the setup that I used. I used 28.4 was the pressure that I used all the way around for the tire pressure, and the toe was negative 0.15. And again, I always usually add a little bit of negative toe just to keep some heat in the tires, especially if the temperatures are cool. The camber was negative 3.4, and the caster was 11 on the front, and on the rear the toe was 0.2 with the camber at negative 2.3. The electronics are 8 and 11 and 8. And of course, the ABS is always easily maxed out, but the Porsche, you can back off a little bit on the traction control just because of the weight is so great in the rain with it, with the engine, near the back. And of course, the fuel, and I had wet tires, and the number 3 brake pads, and I will come back to this once we get done with the setup. Mechanical, I had number 2 on the anti-roll bar, 51 brake bias, and of course I run a lot more brake bias in the rain for the fact that of course you got the weight back there. Now see, I don't do that for, let's say, the Aston Martin or the AMG or whatever, but basically you can run a lot more rear brake bias with a mid-engine or the Porsche, the rear engine, because the weight's back there. So at least that's the idea behind it. So it's different, depending upon the car, it's obviously different, but this is for the Porsche. The wheel rate or springs are 119,000 for the front, with a bump stop rate of 900 and a bump stop range of 1. And the rear The springs are 162,000 with a bump stop rate of 500 and a bump stop range of 14. And of course, I make it a lot softer, trying to get grip. That's the idea. You want the springs softer. You want the bump stop rate less. Everything is to soften everything up, obviously, because the grip is not there. So again, this is a full wet setup. Any roll bar is 1, and the preload on the diff is 120. And again, with the diff, um, I always add more diff to the slicker conditions. So you need the traction, you need both wheels driving, and it keeps the back end from coming out, from sliding out. When you put more diff in it, and it helps get traction when you have slick conditions. So I just always add more diff to it compared to my dry setup. The shocks or dampers on the front are 5, 6, 5, and 7, and on the rear they're 3, 4, 4, and 6. And again, a lot softer, and again to get the grip, because obviously you're always trying to find grip in the rain, even though you have the rain tires on. Aero, I have 59 in the front, 70 in the rear with a 2 front splitter. 2 front splitter and a 9 rear wing, and I had 3 and 3 of the brake ducts at that time. And of course, that all varies depending upon the temperatures and those kinds of things. So, and of course, the rear wing is, always, I run maybe not max, but near close, because I'm not worried. I'm just more worried about trying to keep the rear end stuck. So let's go and just load the aggressive. And I just wanted to talk about the fuel strategy. Basically, this is what you want to set up when you're getting ready for a race. And this here at the top is how much fuel you're starting the race with. Okay, so whatever you got this set up, that's what you start the race with. And of course, your tire is dry, or you have wet. You can go select and have wet, either one. Now, if you notice, when you hit wet, this blanks out. This blanks out because wet tires you have infinite number of. Okay, so that you don't have to worry about how many sets of wet tires you have. Dry, though, if you have it selected in the menu, you can have limited sets of dry tires, and that definitely makes an added challenge with ACC, because whether you're doing your championship and single player, or maybe you're doing a race in a league or anything else, that they have that selected where they have limited tires, you really have to be careful and use you might only have 4 or 5 sets of tires for the whole qualifying, practice, and the race. So you really have to use that very carefully and not just go burn them all up, and then you got no good tires for the race. So that's again one of the big extra challenges that was like a third dimension type thing to me. And then the front brake, you got the front and rear brakes, and obviously you got the number 1 brake pad, or you have the number 2, or the number 3, or the number 4. Okay, the number 1 is your qualifying, and I know you can get an hour, but you might be able to get 2 hours out of the number 1s. It just depends upon how hard your driving style and the heat and the brake ducts, and there's a lot of variations. I'm pretty sure I did a 2-hour race. I think I had them once. I might have had the 2, so I don't remember. But again, that's the most aggressive brake pad. The number 2s are the next as far as aggressive, and they can have a little bit of wet weather. If you have a little bit of rain, it's not that big. They can still have good braking performance, and they're also meant to last a lot longer. I think they're meant to last at least 12 hours, if not longer than that, for the long endurance races. The number 3s are the full wets. So those are, again, if you're just in a lot of rain and in full wets, that's what you want to run, is the number 3 brake pads. The number 4s are just basically for you to see what it's like to see when the brake pads are worn. That's all these are for. The number 4s, you can take the car out, and in 15-20 minutes you'll see what it feels like to have worn out brake pads, because that's what they're for. They're to simulate worn out brake pads after X amount of time, and that way you know what it feels like. That's what the number 4s are for. Okay, so that's the brake pads that you can select. Now let's get down to the pit stop strategy. The pit stop strategy, of course, you got different numbers for different strategies. So let's say number 1, you are doing a dry, and you're starting out with the number 1 tire set, and so the number 2 tire set is what you're going to put on when your first pit stop strategy. Okay, and of course you just use current pressures to run the pressures the same as you started the race with. And of course your brake pads here would be the same as the brake pads you have up there. All these pressure, and of course if you needed, let's say it's getting hotter or colder or whatever, you can make individual adjustments to your tire pressures if you want to knock them all down a half a pound or whatever it is, or raise them up or whatever, and get all those set. And then you also have fuel to add here, to where, you know, if you have a pit stop where it's a longer race, you can add fuel. You can add how much fuel you want to add to the race, to your car for the race. And let's say that's what you want to set for your number 1 pit stop strategy, is basically having it at your number 2 set, and your pressures and all that are what you want. Well, maybe let's say you know it's going to rain in 30-40 minutes, and it's going to be heavy rain. Well, you might want to go to wet set for your number 2. So basically number 1's this, and number 2 is going to be wet. So number 1's dry with the number 2 tire, and then number 1 is that, and then number 2 is going to be for the wet tires. And of course then you're going to want to push your pressures, you know, up around 28 or 28 and a half or whatever, depending upon the temperature, because they run a lot more pressure than the regular slick. So then you're going to put your pressures, you know, up to where you want it, and then depending upon what brake pad you have here, and how much rain you're getting, you might want to change your brake pad. If it's going to be, you know, you got a long race and it's going to be raining a long time, you want to have your brake pads changed. So again, that's just different strategies that you might want to do, and of course the fuel that you want to add at the pit stop, if you can add fuel. And all you do is save it to, you know, save the setup, whatever setup it's under, and it'll save those settings. So then when you come into pits, all you got to do is select what pit stop strategy you want, and it'll, you know, whatever fuel you're putting, or dry or wet or whatever, it'll all be there ready for when you enter the pits. Then, of course, let's go ahead and go to this menu.
Green light, go, go, go.
So let's say you have this menu for the strategy for your pits. So basically all you have to do is go down to your pit strategy and select 2, and see it jumps automatically to the wet, because that's what you have it on. And then of course you can go down to how much fuel you want to, you know, you got 20 liters, so that's what you're adding right there. Or you can change that. You can change your brakes. All you got to do is select that and see your brakes come up, and you can decide, you know, which ones you want to have. Or you got suspension and bodywork checked. You can always, you know, deselect those if you don't want any of that done and it's too much time wasted. But as you can tell, you know, I deselected. It's still 30 seconds. It's the minimum is 30 seconds, so you can't get any less than that. So if you need to add some fuel, that's okay, because usually you can add some fuel and still be within your 30 seconds. You know, so you're not going to lose any time with that, even if you need to add fuel. So, or you can go back to pit stop strategy 1, and it'll jump back to the dry, and then you have that. And of course, you can do that while you're driving on the track, preferably on straightaways, just to, you know, so it doesn't mess you up. Or when you enter pit lane. And of course, once you enter pit lane, you can still change things, but once you enter the box, then it's locked in. Well, actually, it's not locked in. Once you shut the car off, it's locked in. You can still enter the box and change things, but like I say, once you shut the ignition off then they're going to start their pit stop. So whatever you have selected then that's what it's going to do. So that's what I just wanted to run over. I sure hope that answers some of your questions with the pit stop strategy and also the pit stop menu here on um, the MFD here. So basically, I sure hope that answers some of the questions. And if you have any other questions, just go ahead and leave your comments below, and I'll try to help the best that I can. And again, I will put the setup link in the description. And if anybody wants to try it, and let me know how it goes with that. The feedback is appreciated. And I hope everybody has a great day, and you come back soon. See ya.